Hello. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to be speaking about The Dead School by Patrick McCabe. God, did I enjoy reading this book. Patrick McCabe has one of the most enjoyable styles I've read for, I can't remember how long it's been since I've read someone who writes in just such an idiosyncratic manner. It's a joy to read every single page. There's 350 pages in this book. I read this book in 3 days. First day I read 100 pages. Second day I read 200 pages. My eyes were sore. There's just so much pleasure to get out of this book. It's fantastic. Just to give you a little taste of the style and a little bit of an introduction to what the book is actually about, let me read the first page. First page is called Hello There. Hello there, boys and girls, and I hope you are all well. The story I have for you this morning is all about 2 teachers and the things they got up to in the days gone by. It begins in the year of our Lord, 1956, in the maternity hospital in Ireland, when a wee fat chubby lad by the name of Malachi fell out of Sissy, who was married to Packy Dudgeon, the biggest bollocks in the town. At first, he was a happy-go-lucky little fellow who liked nothing better than to ride around on the scooter his father had made for him, shouting, "Hello there," and "Not a bad day now," to all his neighbours. But it wasn't long before he quit that carry-on. As Alec and the lads who worked the trawlers said one day, "Would you look at Dudgeon? The all stupid walk of him. It wouldn't take long to fix that." That's Patrick McCabe's very friendly, personable style, like he's telling you the story. His writing is filled with things that are usually not in literature. It's too informal, but in this book, it's just a joy. It's like from the first line, Patrick McCabe is telling you this story, and it's wonderful. Discuss what this book is about. Primarily, there are 2 central characters. There is Malachi Dudgeon. Malachi was born in 1956. The other principal character, whose name is Raphael Bell, was born in 1913, so 43 years earlier. That is going to be quite significant. You know, someone born in 1913 is going to be quite a lot different from someone born in 1956. It is significant. So I'll tell you first a little bit about Raphael Bell. When he was a little boy, his father was murdered, and this caused him to say to himself that I am going to make my mother proud of me. I'm going to grow up to be a hardworking, diligent, God-fearing Catholic Irishman. I'm going to be successful in my life. I'm going to be a teacher. I know that. That's my destiny. And he did. He did all of those things. He grew up. He became a prefect at his school. And when he heard that there was a bully picking on one of the younger kids, he took that bully and challenged him to a fist fight, and he beat the piss out of him. Because it was right, and because it was the moral thing to do. That's how we deal with bullies, and he'll never pick on a little kid ever again. Raphael felt quite proud of himself for doing that, for doing the right thing. And he always did the right thing. He became a teacher. He was an excellent teacher, and very noticeably so. One day he was invited to become the head master of a school. I believe the school's name is St. Andrews. And he was very, very strict, conservative, perhaps even a little bit despotic. I think that's the right word. Like, he didn't think twice about administering little corporal punishment to the students if they deserved it. He was strict, but he was fair, and the times were conservative times when he was the headmaster. He was born in 1913, so I guess he would have become headmaster probably about 1945, somewhere around there. So very, very strict, but very, very successful. Under his guidance as the headmaster, this school, St. Andrews, became the absolute pride and joy of the merry city of Dublin town. Like, it quickly became the best school under his headmaster guidance. The football team won the soccer championship 3 years in a row. The choir was the first ever to be on the radio from his school because they were so talented. They won competitions. All of the mothers and fathers were so proud to send their children to this school because they knew it was the best school in Dublin because of Raphael Bell, the headmaster. But things began to change in the 1970s. The world changed and the social attitudes began to change. Raphael Bell did not want to change with the times. All of a sudden, there was this parents' committee, and they told him that there will be no more corporal punishment at the school. Now, a man like this, who's been so successful and so strict, stringent, straight, his whole life, doesn't want to be told what he can and cannot do, especially after he's achieved so much. He doesn't want these interlopers who've never taught a day's school in their lives to come and tell him how to run a school. Like, who do you think you are to come in here and challenge my authority? But these are new times. He used to take the children on this field trip to this prison to honor the Irish people who had fallen in the cause of Irish independence. And the parents say, no, they'd rather he didn't do that anymore. And he would rather that he took the children to the big new water park because they think that would be more fun for the children. And those kinds of social changes can really destroy a man because he's unwilling to go along with the changing world. All he sees is moral decadence and moral decay, and he wants no part of it. And he wants no part of it to enter into his school. Let's move over to the second other character, Malachi Dudgeon. Malachi had a hard time growing up because he was a happy little boy until the day he realized that his mother was cheating on his father. And he loved his mother and he loved his father very, very much. His father was a happy-go-lucky fellow, maybe not too bright, but cheerful. His father dearly loved his wife. And so when the day Malachi discovered his mother in action, well, that had a devastating effect on him. And then he realized that he wasn't the only one who knew that his mother was having an affair. Actually, it was the entire town knew of it. And worse than that, it seems that his father knew about it as well, but had decided to turn a blind eye to it because he loved her. He didn't want to say anything if that's what she chooses to do. But, one day his father killed himself in a way that didn't look like suicide because, Catholics, suicide is not the thing for being a proper Catholic. So he killed himself in a way that it looked like it was an accident, but everybody knew because everybody knew what was happening in his life. So Malachi grew up hating his mother and really quite carrying this seed, this poison, this venom that he couldn't get rid of. Malachi grew up, he liked rock and roll, he liked to go to the movies, he liked to watch Midnight Cowboy with Dustin Hoffman and the tall guy. He liked to watch Jack Nicholson and he would do the voices and he would hang out with his friends, smoking cigarettes. And then one day he too fell in love. Head over heels in love with his girlfriend. Now, the thing about Malachi is he is not a hard worker. He's a bit of a lazy character. That's okay. World's full of them, right? So Malachi ended up as a teacher without any real ambition or hope. It was something to do so that he could enjoy his life, but he never cared for it. Now, we come to the critical point. Malachi somehow talked his way into working at St. Andrew's with Raphael Bell as the headmaster, strict, controlling, authoritarian man. Malachi, slack, loose, and shiftless. The problem is it's not that Malachi is lazy or disinterested. It's just that he doesn't have the fundamentals. This is his first teaching job. He doesn't have the skill. He doesn't have the aptitude. And he does a poor job of it. He doesn't know how to handle the boys. They drive him crazy because they see that they can. And it really works on him quite badly. It slowly is crushing him. But he's not lazy. He really does want to do a good job. He goes home at night and he thinks about how he could be a better teacher. And especially because the headmaster, Raphael, is watching him like a hawk because he's quite disapproving of the way that Malachi is teaching his class. And he feels that this Malachi is destroying his school by not getting firm control of the boys. I'll stop there with the plot. But while I'm talking about what I liked about the book, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. Okay, Grant, why don't you tell us what you liked about the book? Surely I will. The writing style, the writing is just wonderful. I'm going to read a little bit right now. By the way, even though it's 350 pages, the chapters are all very short. There's a lot of blank space. That's why it was so easy for me to read. Chapters are rarely, that's actually a very long chapter, that one. They're mostly 2-3 pages at the most. So it's very easy to read. So I'm going to read you this whole page, which is called Love is in the Grave, Part 2. Love is in the grave is this this phrase that Malachi has. Like when he saw his mother cheating on her father, like he got this phrase about how that put love in the grave. That's like a mantra he lives by through his life. And just as an example of how Patrick McCabe writes, I hope that I will do it justice because it's so lyrical. When you're in love, you think it can never end. You think the idea of love ever going into the ground is ridiculous. You say to yourself, imagine a time when we are not together. It can't be done. When you are as much in love as we are, it can't happen. It just can't happen, my friend. It can, of course. It happens all the time. Exactly when it starts is always hard to say, but once it does, before you know it, you're standing looking at a tombstone with that old familiar word on it. Funny how it happens, really. It's not as if the one you love comes up to you and says, darling, there's something I've been meaning to say to you. You remember that love business between us? It's all over, I'm afraid. That's not the way it happens at all. It's much more banal than that. Ask Paki Dudgeon. She doesn't look at you the same way anymore, smile when you say certain things. You tell yourself nothing's wrong, but you know there is. Oh yes. You know all right. It's hard to say exactly how you do, just as Paki did all those years ago as he sat in the half-light of the kitchen with that shine in his eye, dreaming of a love he'd once known, now buried deep in a grave. His poor, stupid old son Malachi swore he'd never stand over. It's wonderful. It's those little things that you never get in literature, except in this book. For a writer to write these words, this sentence, funny how it happens, really. Like that's not literature, that's conversation. But here, it's so wonderful to read a book. Every sentence is bouncing with this kind of fun energy. Even when it gets, when it gets brutal, it gets pretty brutal, I'll tell you that. So that's what I love about the book. Number one, the writing style. It is the freshest writing I've read for a long time, even though it's not a new book. I think it's from 1997. The second thing I like about the book is that neither Malachi nor Raphael are villains. They're not criminals. They're not bad guys. Raphael, he's strict. The world is changing and he's unwilling to change. He is going to be either crushed or left behind. The world is not going to change to appease Raphael. And Malachi is not a bad character. It's his first job. He's not doing a good job because he doesn't have the skills yet. Neither of them are evil. Neither of them are bad. Because they are working together, and Raphael's looking at Malachi as sort of the embodiment of this new corruption coming into his school. And Malachi looks at Raphael as this dictator, this taskmaster. Like, why are you making my life so horrible? Like, don't you realize it's ruining me? And these two men blame one another. They shouldn't, but they do. And I thought that was fantastic. The way people annoy one another, the way that most people have probably a high regard for themselves, and they have no idea how much animosity they might provoke in other people. See, I don't have a car, so I take the public transportation. I really, truly believe that you cannot be optimistic about society if you take the public transportation, because it's all the scumbags are on the bus. They're probably not scumbags in their own mind, but when you see them doing these things, like, I'll never forget, I saw a man on the SkyTrain. He had his keys, his house keys, and he was sticking them into his ear to scratch an itch. Like, it looked like he was trying to turn the ignition on in his brain. And he was scratching away and then looking at it like he had found some treasure. You probably think you're a great person and you might be a good worker, you might be a good family member, but I would drop you into a volcano. I really would. All right, let's get back to the book now. Where am I? Okay, so now, even though I really, truly love the book, the ending, the climax, was a little bit hard to enjoy because of the central premise that Malachi and Raphael are not enemies. There's nothing that one did to the other. Like, nobody needs revenge. The world has happened. These two men worked at the same place, briefly. They have this terrible animosity. So it's literature. We need to have some kind of a climax, and the climax of this book is that these two men are going to have this final confrontation. You don't want either of them to be the victor or to be the loser, because neither of them really deserve it. It's just, we were in this unpleasant situation together, it would be wonderful if we could go on with our lives, but we've been too demented by what happened. We can't get over it. And so now we're going to have this final, you ruined my life. No, you ruined my life. You ruined my life. But neither of them are really justified in this big standoff that they're going to have in the end. And that made the ending a little bit, not unpleasant, but just somewhat unsatisfying. The book needs an ending, and we needed to have something to wrap it up. It's just that what makes the book so wonderful, this conflict which arises not directly, but quite indirectly, sort of leads to a slightly disappointing finale. But I love the book. The book was so much fun to read. I couldn't stop reading it. 200 pages in a single day, that is a lot of reading that I did. I think at least 50% of the pleasure is just in the way that Patrick McCabe writes his stories. Listen to this. Imagine writing a book with these sentences. This is the beginning of the chapter. So that wasn't very nice, was it? No, indeed it wasn't. No one was saying it was, and of course, obviously, it would be hard to know quite what to do about it, but there must have been a better way. Imagine that. Imagine writing those sentences. That's ridiculous to write like that, but it's so shockingly fresh to write a book in this peculiar style. I absolutely loved it. 95% of the book is wonderful. Just that 5%, the disappointment with the climax, it's a little bit hard to get past that. I remember when I was a waiter, we had this manager who would say that, everything could be wonderful, like the meal, the food, the prices, the service, everything could be fine. But if you give people like a shit cup of coffee at the end of the meal, they're going to remember that when they leave the restaurant. It seems unfair, doesn't it? But everything else was so supremely satisfying. Yeah, but that's what's going to stick in my mind. Please read this book and try to be forgiving about the ending. I'm also trying to be fair-minded about the ending. I hope you'll give it a try. Okay, thank you very much for watching, everybody. America, please don't invade Canada. Donald Trump, I'll send you a whole case of this if you promise not to invade. I'll send you a couple of bottles anyway. The shipping is very expensive. And with your crazy trade war, it's probably going to get more expensive. Thank you very much for watching. This is Grant from Canada, reading Irish literature. Have a great day. Please don't invade. Before I begin the video today, I would just like to say something to my American viewers. Please don't invade Canada. I know what you want. It's what every American wants, but you can't have it. Okay? It's ours. You have your own maple syrup. In Vermont, I think it is. You've got it. But I know it's not like this. This is Canadian grade A, very dark, strong taste. That's the good stuff right there. From Quebec, syrup de maple. Please don't invade Canada. When I was a teacher in Budapest, I'll cut this out and I'll put this at the end of the video if you're interested, because I'm going to ramble away a little bit. I would go to these companies, and often I would hear these stories about how hard it was for people to get along. And there were little things like, because the men were dressed in suits and ties, they always wanted to turn the thermostat down so it was a bit cooler. The women were wearing dresses and skirts, so not as much clothing, so they wanted to turn the thermostat higher. Always heard about these wars about the thermostat. If I got to my companies early, sometimes I would get a coffee or a tea, and you would go into these corporate kitchens. There would be this list of rules taped to the refrigerator. It is not permitted to microwave fish. It is not permitted to microwave sausage. If you put food in the refrigerator, you must label your food with your name and the date you put it in there. All food in the refrigerator must be removed on Friday before you leave work. All food will be thrown away Saturday morning. And all of these rules because people forget or people don't realize. I remember one student, he was a businessman, but he was my English student, telling me a story about how they had to fire someone. No, they didn't have to, but they chose to. How they fired someone because he microwaved popcorn at the company. From this man's point of view, this manager, he thought it was practically insane that anyone would, the whole floor, all afternoon, all we could smell was microwave popcorn. That's all we could smell. And all of us hated that man. But I guess they didn't tell him. And when they did it again, they just said, look, you haven't passed your 3 months probation and we're sorry, we're just not gonna keep you on. And I don't even think they told him it was because of the microwave popcorn. But from that guy's point of view, you know, he just wants a snack in the afternoon. He gets a little bit peckish. He brings a bag of microwave popcorn and he's eating the popcorn. So, you know, he doesn't realize that his smell is everywhere on the floor. There were so many stories like that. I heard stories about there were women who came to the company and they were dressed too sexy. And they had to be told, look, too sexy. Wear more conservative stuff. All right, this is a business place. Don't dress like that. Men or women who wear too much perfume. Or the opposite. I remember there was this one story about a woman who was like smelly. How did that story go? I was working and I had this one student. Oh, yeah. I was asking her how she came to be at this company, and she said that at her previous company, she worked in an office. There was one office and 2 women worked there, and the other woman was smelly, bad smell. But she couldn't bring herself to tell her about it, so she endured it for a year and a half, sitting in a small room with a smelly woman, and eventually couldn't tolerate it anymore and applied for another job, not because she was unsatisfied, just to get away from the smelly woman. Imagine that. You know, look, piroshka. If you want to eat sausages for dinner and you want to fuck all night, that's fine. But please have a shower in the morning so you don't come to work stinking, okay? Clean it all up. Put on some underarm deodorant. Come to work clean. Don't come to work and bring your stink in here. Honestly, there were so many stories like that. I worked with people who were really supremely unpleasant. And you just look at them like, do you not know how you are?